All right, welcome back to another episode. We were just talking, we think this is episode 8. This is Halle, one of my clients, and she's here to share her story of how she's recovered and now working on optimizing her cycle. And we're gonna do our best to not skip over anything just because we know each other so well. So I'm going to pry her for details about her story. But you actually have a really, it's not unique, but it is one that would like intimidate people being like, well, I've come from this eating disorder background. There's no hope for me.
Yeah, 100%.
And the Lord gets to say, actually, I've kind of done a thing in this chick named Halle, not to minimize what you're going through, but to show you that recovery is possible on multiple layers, right? So maybe that's really like the theme of like I think you could have. So again, like this is where I'm going to pause myself and not skip over the details, but I kind of want you to go to the very beginning, kind of when you developed your eating disorder and then you went through recovery and all these things. And the reason why I want us to go back there is because sometimes I think like we don't realize how much healing the Lord wants to do in our life and how many layers of healing. And it may not happen all at one time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's okay. So yeah. So like start from there.
Okay. So I developed my eating disorder. I want to say about like halfway through my sophomore year of college. I'm 25 for reference. So at this time I was probably 19 or 20. About halfway through my sophomore year of college, I just kind of got into exercise. I just wanted to lose a little bit of weight and start eating healthy. Um, which kind of just became like the perfect storm and snowballed into a full blown eating disorder. And I didn't really know what it was at the time. I just was continuously losing weight. And then I just would eat less and less and less and exercise more and more and more and just became very restrictive over my food and my exercise and my schedule. And then you get all those outside compliments from people of like, wow, how did you do this? Like, can you help me lose weight? And you look so good. And it's just, I think all of these comments kind of feed into you subconsciously without actually knowing it.
So I mean, just to pause, just because like I know that I came from a disordered eating, but I wouldn't say that it went as far as the eating disorder. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, that's extreme, like, you know, but like you, like, would it be fair to say that you started just like everybody else who has started in wanting to lose weight? Right. So like it wasn't like you're like, and I can't wait to develop an eating disorder.
No.
Or I plan on taking it so extreme that like it turns into like an eating disorder.
Yeah, not at all. It kind of just happened slowly. And really, I didn't even, I mean, obviously, I didn't see it happening. I don't think anyone else really saw it happening. Um, and
Until
then,
it's there, right? Until you're like, oh, and hey, like we're here now.
yeah, like something's not right about
Mhm.
and I started to become like very isolated too, which
Mhm.
wasn't like me. So I remember going to my parents and saying like, hey, I think something's wrong, like just my habits, and I'm losing a lot of weight and I just don't feel very good, and like I think I should go see someone. And they were just both kind of like, yeah, maybe, but like I don't see really anything wrong with what you're doing, but if you feel like that would help you, then you should get help. And so I went to, it's called the Emily program over in Spokane. I'm from Washington. Um, and they diagnosed me there with orthorexia and anorexia. But I was in college, so I was like, okay, well, what kind of like programs can we like work through, because I don't really have time to be taking care of this too. So I ended up doing outpatient. I think it was like 2 or 3 times a week for 8 hours. Um, and I would go there and then just come home and undo all the work that I did, just straight back into restrictive behaviors. I would come home and run. I would not eat for the rest of the day. I wouldn't eat the next day. Like, just it honestly kind of made things worse. So I ended up getting sent to inpatient over in Seattle, and it was basically just like a weight restoration program. There was therapy to it, but I think it was more to just kind of put weight on you and get you back to where you should be. Um, and I remember that being very hard and just kind of like praying through it, but it wasn't like I was really putting the work in. It was just, it was a scary place to be, and I was just there to gain weight and then get out. And so I was there for 2 months, and I ended up leaving because I didn't want to be there, and it it just didn't feel like a good place for me. And I told my parents, like, oh, I'm okay now. Like, I gained weight again. I'll be okay once I leave. I feel so much better now. Um, and so I left there and I moved back home with my parents just to have a little bit more support. I took a year off from college. Um, and again, it just was a slippery slope. I started exercising more and I started eating little, little by little, less and less. Full thing happened again, the whole 9 yards. I lost a ton of weight, and I remember there was a point where it was after I had met my fiance and I went to the hospital because I had choked on steak, actually. Yeah, yeah. Had to go back for surgery. It was a whole fiasco, but I got super sick after that from like all the meds they gave me and stuff. And I remember weighing myself, and are we allowed to say numbers on
Yeah.
here?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I remember weighing myself and I weighed 100 pounds, and I was like,
And then like you're like a tall individual, let alone me weighing 100 pounds, and you're like I'm only 5'3".
yeah,
Like
I'm
like I
5'5"
would be skin
still.
and bones.
Yeah. Yeah, it was not good. And I just was like, I need to address what's happening. I need to tell Dakota what's happening. Like, I can't live like this anymore. And then I kind of went for like 5 months without really doing anything about it. Just like, I should do something, but like I kind of like how the way I look, and I like my mentality and my drive, and it's all fine. I'll just try and put on a little weight.
And so let's pause and talk about that, because I think that that is also where people can connect to of like, I'm sure in this achieving a super low weight intentionally, and then by getting sick from choking on steak, which I'm just learning about, that is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
But
think
I'm
it's
sure,
actually like a symptom of anorexia is like esophagitis or
yeah.
whatever it's called, but you can't swallow food correctly. So it kind of makes sense now.
I mean, like it totally makes sense. And actually, side note, like there's a whole lot of digestive issues when people are like starting to recover their period
Yeah.
from coming from an eating disorder, like in that transition, it's like slow, like the like bowels empty much slower, like the stomach contents empty much slower, and does cause some like GI distress. And so it's kind of like one of those things of like, do I have Crohn's? Do I have IBS? Do I have all these things? Or how much, to the point of if like swallowing can be a side effect of anorexia, how many other digestive things
Yeah.
can be a side effect of like an eating disorder and transitioning out of that? So I'm
Yeah.
actually glad that you mentioned that, just because I feel like there's so much that HA touches that like you almost don't even realize, like what's going on.
Yeah. And to go back to like, I I did the same thing that a lot of people do that I know that you did. I thought I was a special unicorn. So like I got an MRI of my brain thinking like, oh, I don't have a period because I have a tumor on my head, not because I weigh 100 pounds. Like, oh,
Could
I
possibly
got
be it.
my labs run, I got ultrasounds, I had a DEXA scan, and they told me I had osteopenia, but it was like, it's not osteoporosis. That's fine. Like, I'm still doing good. Like, I did all the things and nothing clicked in my head still.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, there's a whole other TED talk that we can go down. The thing about nobody, even like most OBGYNs don't even value like someone having their cycle. So why would we ever connect me not having a period is connected to all these things?
Yeah.
Right.
And it was just, we can put you on birth control or we can give you these estrogen creams that'll help you. And And I remember I never really did any of that because I was like, well, I don't want to like do that to my body really, because I kind of knew that birth control was bad, but um it was still just like, they were just masking it. It was never like, you're unhealthy, you need to gain weight, or like you have osteopenia. It was just like, well, we could give you estrogen.
Which is so interesting, right? So think about it, like anyone that's going through HA recovery and is probably even watching this isn't the people that are like, oh, okay, well, let me just fix this and then like move on with my life, right? Like there's like a struggle, hence why they're here, right?
Yeah.
And so even in the midst of addressing the actual root problem, which is kind of what you just said, like, I don't want to do all these other things because I know that there's actually another problem. And so even while you're working on that actual problem, you're like, is there a shortcut? Is there any other way that we can do this? So it's
Oh
almost
yeah.
like this conflict is within us, right? And it's like, I know that there's a root cause. I know that there's a, I mean, like there's a way to address this, but if there's any other shortcut that
Yeah.
I could take, if there's anything else that we can do to bypass this would be wonderful.
Yep, 1000%.
So circling back to what I was, before we got on this tangent of, I'm sure along those lines, like issues had like started to develop, which we don't even realize of. I have an idea of what discipline looks like. I have an idea, like a very narrow mindset of what certain things are. Like I have an idea of what fitness is. I have an idea of what attractive is. I have an idea what discipline looks like, right? And so what are some of those things, or how did you navigate having to like acknowledge that, okay, maybe my perception of discipline, fitness, beauty has been possibly tainted, and I'm functioning out of there to, Lord, how do I develop a new perception
Yeah.
and
I
function
think
from there?
yeah, I think it was, I mean, like we've talked about, it was just I was worshiping all these false idols that I thought were me. I thought my whole identity was, I go to the gym 7 days a week, I eat really healthy, I'm complimented on this all the time, like people love this, this is who I am. I love this for me. Like this this just makes me happy to be this way. And so I think when I started to address like, oh, maybe that's not my identity. It was just like, okay, Lord, then what is my identity? Like, who am I without these things? And I remember like that was something that was very hard, was like, who am I without the gym? Who am I without healthy eating? Like, I don't, like, what do I do? It was, I don't know who I am without these things.
It's so interesting that the idols that we wind up worshiping wind up becoming so much of our identity that we actually don't ever get to discover who we are.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? Because think about it, like, you're like, who am I without healthy eating? Well, the idol was orthorexia, right? And so it's almost like, that's who I am. I am a clean eater, right? And the Lord's like, is that really the depth that I made you? Like, that's it?
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing more to you. There's nothing more.
Yeah.
Um, so that's interesting because I know that that was really, really big for you during like the recovery process. Because I remember like you would be like, I don't know how to eat tomorrow. Like I don't know how to function without this idol or this mask of orthorexia, because orthorexia tells me exactly what to eat.
Yep. There was
And like, you want me to operate in freedom? What do you mean?
Yeah, yeah, so many times where I was just like, Ashley, like, I want to give all this up, but like, how do I even begin to do that? Like, I don't know a life without restriction and without counting my calories and weighing my food and eating at this time and thinking about food before I go to sleep and thinking about it when I, like, just where do I even begin?
Yeah. So let's quickly answer that. Not that that was a quickly answered question, right? But how do you think that you went from like, what do you mean? Like, what do I eat tomorrow? Like, who am I tomorrow? Like, if I'm supposed to give this up today, or, you know what I mean? Like, who am I tomorrow and what am I eating? Right. And like, and like, that wasn't a very quick process.
No.
but but the Lord was faithful to bring you through and guide you through it. So what are some of the things that he had spoken to you about those certain areas?
I think it was one of those things where it was this big root that he was slowly pulling out. It was never like I woke up and I was like, "Oh, all right, like it's gone now." I mean, there were like times when that did happen. Like I used to track everything on my fitness pal and then, it was one day like I'm just going to delete this and everything's going to be fine. And then I never thought about it again. And there were little things like that where I'm just like, "Oh, I'm freely putting peanut butter on my oatmeal today. Like yesterday I was weighing it." Like those sorts of things. But I feel like recently too, just the word like surrendering has been huge for my recovery because I realized like I kicked and screamed for 8 months before I got my period. I drug myself through that. And it's like, well, if I would just surrender, then I wouldn't have to live this way anymore. If I just kind of gave up what I was doing and doing the opposite of what I was doing, and I hone into what the Lord is trying to tell me, um, to just give it up and lay it at His feet and take me out of the wilderness and into the promised land, um, that He was going to heal me. And so I just
Mm.
really had to listen to what He was trying to tell me.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like one of those things where it's not like the Lord plops down, here is your 5-step process
Yeah. Yeah.
to your healing, which is one of those things where I don't think so much Christianity is like, and here's your 5-step process. I think it's humans who are like, what's the steps? Can't you give me a package? Is there a handout? Is there a guide that guides me through this? Like, are you, you know what I mean? And the whole point with the Lord is like, I am going to answer you. I am going to speak to you, but like, I need you to do the thing that I'm actually talking to you about. And sometimes we're like, that's cool, but like, what are the next 3 steps before I decide
Yeah.
whether I want to do that first step?
Yeah. It was always like, can I leap ahead of what you're trying to get me to do right now? Which brings me to, I want to bring this up too, is before I got my period, I think I had been all in for 7 months. And I told you, I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I'm just going to see if I can get Clomid so that I can just ovulate and get my period. Like, I'm tired of doing this because clearly my body's broken. I haven't got my period yet. And probably like a week later, before I could even go on the Clomid, I got my period.
And I remember I was like, Lord, she's close to giving up. I'm not trying to tell you what to do or trying to tell you that that like the timeline is now, but what I'm just bringing up to you is that she is close to abandoning ship, and I am just here interceding and praying, and I'm just saying, if we could get a little bit of something to have
Yep.
her hold on, like I think she can do it. And then like
Yep.
you're like, I started. I was like, oh, praise the Lord.
Yep.
So because I know that some people are like, what are the juicy details? So what are the exact things that you did, which I say that because it's never really a simple formula, because everyone's so individual, and at the rate that people work through this and the timing, like some things people work on first, some people work on last, but what are the big rocks that you were like, this is definitely responsible for moving me from not having my cycle to at least having a cycle?
Yeah. Well, right off the bat, I definitely ate a lot more than I was. I stopped all of my exercise. I was going to the gym like 7 days, 6 to 7 days a week for like 2 hours. And I just completely stopped all of that. I didn't go to the gym for 9 months. I would go for like little walks and do some like gentle yoga here and there, but that was the extent of it. Um, they
And
say,
so whenever you talk about eating so much more, I know like a lot of people are like, okay, no, I know I have to eat more, but I remember at the time I was eating 1800 and I was like, clearly I'm close, right?
mhm,
But the simple fact that some days I literally had to add in 1,000 calories.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
To where like I don't think to where we think that, oh, I get to control how much more is more, right? When really for you, like you had to learn like every single time like you thought that you had that like you were eating more, it still wasn't enough. So like you
Yeah.
had to keep pushing. So I mean, like I know that we can breeze through that now, but remember for those 8 months, like that, or for those 7 months, like that was the struggle of like, you're like, I am eating more. And I'm like, I totally believe you. And I do think you are eating more, but your body's telling a different story.
Yeah, I mean, it was like my body wasn't turning on, so clearly it needed more. And I think I had probably added in like I was probably eating around like 1700, 1800, and I probably hit a point where I was eating like 3000 calories a day before I got my period. And then after I got my period, I wasn't ovulating, so then my body wanted more calories and it wanted more weight. And I think that was very hard to address because it was like, how am I doing all of this and my body still wants more?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
That
was
was a huge
tracking my
thing.
yeah, and I wasn't tracking my calories at that point, but I still had to add more calories, like more to every meal, more to every snack, gain more weight. I don't know if there was anything like I did this and I got my period. I think it
Right.
kind of just like you said, like it was just like I have to keep giving more and keep giving more and let it take its time.
Yeah, and so really, I mean, you know, like the umbrella could be like I had to give up control, right? Because I could no longer determine what was enough weight, and I could no longer determine what was enough calories. I could no longer determine like, oh, well, I've hit this body composition size and that's enough,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I think it was kind of like that the whole time where I would be like, all right, like I'm a little bit uncomfortable with what my body looks like, but if I got my period like this, it would be okay. And the Lord's like, no, let's actually like address what you think about your body. So let's put on more weight. And it just kind of was like this endless cycle of like, okay, what can I do today that is going to not change my body so much? Like, can I go for a longer walk? Can I like skimp a little bit on this meal? Like, I'll be okay if I get my period while I'm still doing these things. And it was like, I'm not going to get my period still doing these things.
Yeah, so it was literally like the very small areas that you were still trying to control were the actual areas that were holding, that were like to like keeping you at 90% and not getting that 100% to healing and getting your cycle back, which is so interesting because I think that's the lie of control is that, well, just having a little bit of control is okay and I can manage that. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like, it's just a little bit of sin. Like, I can manage this. I can play with this fire of control.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And it
And
was like all these little, because I would send you like meal diaries and it was like all these little things of like, oh, why are you doing that still? Like I'm putting zucchini in my oatmeal, I'm eating carb balanced tortillas, I'm only eating bread once a day, I'm using mustard instead of, like I'm eating low fat yogurt instead of full fat yogurt, just all these things. It was like, oh yeah, I probably could be trying a little bit harder.
well, think about like those are the blind spots that you really like it's become such a habit, and then it's so approved by diet culture and even health culture, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the other thing that you and I had to work on of like, yes, this may be quote unquote healthy, but in your particular situation, does this apply?
Yeah.
Right. So like there was this whole other thing of like, I can't let orthorexia tell me what to eat and how to function. I can't let anorexia tell me what to do and how to function. I can't let diet culture, you know. So it was kind of like all these things of trying on different hats, right? Until the Lord's like, how about you let me? You know what I mean? And I know that we say that jokingly now, but it's kind of one of those things of like, it's the biggest leap, but really not the biggest leap at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and I had told you this a couple weeks ago that I was just sitting on the couch doing nothing. Like I was probably just scrolling through my phone and the Lord's like, what if you use this as a testimony of my goodness rather than constantly being worried about what other people think of you? And I was just like, oh, like, yeah, what if I did do that? Because this whole time I've just been like, I'm doing this, but I am terrified of what other people think. Like, cause this isn't my identity anymore of like a little as skinny as I can be, going to the gym. Like, who am I now? And it's like, oh, the Lord's telling me who I am now. Like, I don't have to be worried about these things anymore. And then he just kept telling me, like, I healed you, I healed you, I healed you. And I'm like, yes, Lord, you did heal me.
Yeah. So speaking of that, because like this was really cool, just share about the time you're about to give up again. So look here, this is very common, but Halle almost gave up like 5 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the times I was like, Lord, we need something, right? And you're like, so my mom's friend just
Yeah.
said this, and I about fell out. I was like, oh my gosh. So please share that.
Yeah. This was another one of the times that I was very, very close to giving up. This was before I got my period, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely before.
Okay. My mom had called me, and her best friend had called my mom and was like, "Hey, I don't know, Hallie's just been really heavy on my heart for some reason." And so I was just praying for her and praying about her, and I just got this image of like the Lord's blood running through her body. Like I'm not really sure what it means, and I just broke down in tears.
Well,
Like,
because then like she said something about blood returning
yeah,
to Hallie's body, and we were like,
what?
"Ah!"
Yeah, and she didn't know, so it was just like, I mean, those images that the Lord can just like give to people, it's just, I was beside myself. And then I think it was very soon after that I got my period.
Right. I mean, I think it might have been like 1 to 2 months before, possibly, which is so on track what God does. Like he always um either looks at us in like our God potential and calls us according to like his calling, So I think about like Gideon, like he was in the wine press, hiding from people, doing all these things. And he calls him mighty like warrior, right? And he's like, me, I'm the smallest of my clan, and my clan's the smallest. I'm sitting here hiding in a wine press, right? And so it's kind of like one of those things of where it doesn't add up in like the natural, because at that time, like you're like, I have no signs. And you were like, I just wish I had some signs, right?
Yeah.
And probably even physical signs. And what the Lord gave you was a completely different sign, not so much of a physical sign, but it's so on track on how he like calls it as he sees it in his God potential. You know what I mean? Rather than in our like natural state.
Yeah. And each time, like, I was so close to giving up, I feel like he would just give me this little trickle of like hope, like, okay, things are still moving in the right direction. And, like, even if I didn't feel like there was hope, every time there was a breakdown, I still got up in the next day and was like, all right, I'm going to keep doing this. Like,
Yeah.
no matter how bad I didn't want to do it, and how bad I just wanted to go back to my old ways, like something was still pulling me towards the promised land. Like something was still pulling me in that direction of healing. Like I I wasn't allowed to give up.
Yeah, that is so good. And so one of the things, oh man, it'll like circle back around, but I was like, oh God, Lord, that's good. um, hot dang, I really can't remember.
I'll let you think
Oh
about
yeah, 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 there it is. So I know, like, was like James 1 where it says, "Count it all joy when like you endure trials and tribulations," and we're like, yeah, I hope when that day comes, I can do that.
it. Yeah.
But then it says, so that like you will develop perseverance, and that like you will be fully matured, right? And so, and I know I butchered that verse, and I'll like look it up, but that's basically what I wanted to focus on of during those 7 months. And even now, I mean, like now is definitely better, but during those 7 months, I know like had someone been like, count it as joy, I probably would have punched them. I've been like, you have no idea what I'm going through. Like,
Oh, I
don't
remember
even,
people saying like, "Oh, like it's okay, like it'll be okay," and I'm like, "No, it's not okay. Like you're not in my shoes."
it's not
It's
okay.
not.
I don't think you realize what is going on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um very real feeling. But now that you are, I would say like now we're just fine tweaking things, and like we'll get into that a little bit later. But could you imagine not letting God mature you all the way through this trial to now on this side you sit in so much freedom?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know
And
what I
I
mean?
look back and see like all the ways that his plan unfolded, and I'm just like, wow. I'm during the time it felt like this is never going to happen. This is so hard. And I look back and I see all of the areas that I've been freed from and like where the chains have been broken. And it's just, I mean, his love is undeniable.
Yeah, I mean, even to the point of like body image, right? And so honestly, if someone would have asked me probably as recently as you recovered, I would have been like, check back in with me in like 6 months.
Yeah.
Cause I've chosen just to not have an opinion about this because I don't know where I'm sitting.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I feel like you've definitely moved faster than I have in that. And so I know before you were like, obviously we went from like orthorexia, anorexia, right? Thin, like
Mhm.
eating disorder thin to, and it's fair to say that whenever you are like recovering your cycle, you're probably at the heaviest you're probably ever going to be in life, simply because we have to overshoot to turn on everything and sustain everything and all that. To now, just the other day, you're like, yeah, I lost 5 pounds. And then like, it wasn't even, I mean, obviously it had to be a conscious decision, but it wasn't this massive struggle for you to be like, I know what I need to do. I need to regain those 5 pounds. And then like you did it.
Yeah. Yeah. I
You
mean,
know what I
and
mean?
like, I just kind of like naturally lost those 5 pounds. Like I went from day shift to night shift and I was like incorporating a little bit more exercise and like I wasn't even really thinking about my weight. And then it was like, oh, like I lost 5 pounds, but I need to put those back on because my body's still trying to heal and still
Mhm.
trying to ovulate and everything. Um, and so it was like, no problem, sure, like I'll just eat more. And whereas before that would have been, the world would have ended if
I mean,
I,
you think like you almost quit one time, like you know, like one of the 5 times, because like I was like, what if you only need 5 more pounds?
yeah,
And like you're like, I can't give 5 more pounds. Like,
I'm
what
like,
does
I
that
don't care.
mean?
I don't care. I'm not giving 5 more pounds.
Yeah, right. I mean, so I think even sometimes when it comes to healing of our body image, it's not even so much like, and then I look at myself and I love myself.
Yeah, no.
Right. Like first off, the Lord has just like been racking my brain about what does confidence actually look like and how much of what the world has sold us has been tied into what we even think biblical confidence is. I don't know. I haven't sorted it all out. The Lord hasn't done like revealing it to me, but I like my mind has just been rocked. But
Mhm.
just even the simple fact, what if him developing confidence is being able just to do these little things? And then before you know it, like you look back and you're like, oh, I just simply don't struggle with that anymore.
Mhm.
What if that's confidence? Like, what if that itself is like, no, I didn't self love myself into confidence. I didn't force myself into confidence. I actually just followed the Lord in awe and believed what he said was true about the areas that I needed to address. And what if just the like side effect was, and then over time I just had confidence, right? It's like one of those things of like, what if confidence was never meant to be rooted in our physical appearance?
Yeah.
Hence why us sitting here trying to love our physical appearance seems so
That's not
distant and
working.
untangible, right? You're like, it just doesn't keep working.
Yeah, I don't think it'll ever be one of those things where I stand in front of a mirror and say, "I love you. I love you. I love this part about my body. I love this part about my body. This I accept this." I don't think it'll ever be that. I think it's just kind of like growing into this season where I'm at and just accepting where I'm at and I'm still working on, like accepting my new body and the way that things have gone, but I don't think it is ever one of those things where it's like, and then I woke up and I loved myself for gaining 35 pounds, you know?
Yeah, no, I really think it's one of those things that I think my confidence grows the more I learn about how faithful he is to me. And therefore, like my confidence flows from his faithfulness, which has nothing to do with my body, right? So meaning that if the Lord has called me to do something, like he's going to be faithful to empower me, equip me, and bring me through it, that I don't have to go in there with this body confidence and I don't need body confidence to walk in like everyday life.
Yeah, and I mean, he answered every single last one of my prayers through this whole thing. So it's just I know that he's faithful. I know he hears my prayers and even if they weren't, even if I prayed about it and it wasn't like this that he gave me an answer, I still got them And
So true. So true.
that's just so big of like how faithful he is and how he hears my cries and he's going to answer to them when the timing is right.
So good. Okay. So just recap because I know that you and I can get on tangents left and right. So it took you 7 months to recover your period. There you worked on greatly increasing food, well beyond what you thought that you needed to, multiple times.
And even the foods I was eating too.
Oh yeah, the foods that you were eating, the food rules, structure, I mean, everything down from condiments to, I think that at one time, I think it was like beet chips. I'm like, can you have some tortilla chips? I mean, I'm not saying that tortilla chips are better than beet chips. I'm just saying like there might be something here.
Yeah. Let's unpack this. Why are you eating those?
Exactly, right? So really in a loving environment, exploring why are you doing the things that you're doing, right? So food rules, structure, tons of food rules, increasing food, you decreased exercise, and you've even added it back in and then ovulated. So even taking a break from exercise in order to be able to restart the process to do it in a way that was a healthy and beneficial way, rather than in a way to control like your body subconsciously in some way, right?
Right.
So that and then even so you had your first period, but you had 2 anovulatory cycles or 3?
3.
So that's when like even then you're like, I'm just gonna go back, and I'm like, but what if you need more food?
And it was again one of those things where I told you, I was like, I'm gonna go get labs drawn, I'm gonna see, like, I'm gonna go see the doctor, and like, why am I not ovulating? And then before I could even get into the doctor, I ovulated. And so it was again like God was like, well, here you go, you're doing good.
Totally, right?
And I remember too, before that, I had sat in a dark room and prayed over my ovaries, like literally holding my ovaries and just praying my heart out that I would ovulate. And I ovulated that cycle.
Yeah, right. And so obviously he hears our prayers. And so it's one of those things of where he's like, yes, I will absolutely heal you, but I need you to nourish your body, right? I need you to partner with me and nourish your body, right? And so I don't think we'll ever understand exactly the partnership. We just know that the Lord invites us into partnership, right? I mean, that's wild because that's throughout the Bible. I think of like David and like Goliath, like, you know, like he still had to step up and he still had to do it, and he still had to pick up the stones, and he still had to, you know, do all the things, but it was God that did it, right? So like how many places in our life is God inviting us to partner with him? And sometimes are we just asking God to do it for us? And I know in HA, I was like, Lord, I know you can heal me. Why won't you do it? Just do it. Like, I believe, like, what does it say? Have faith. I have faith. I know you can do it. I know who you are. Why won't you do it? Right. And back then I did not understand, partnership or partnering with God, or why he would invite us into partnership in our healing. And not so that we earn it, because we totally don't, but why sometimes he doesn't just do it. And sometimes he does.
Yeah. I think there was a period of time too, where like it was him doing it. Like, I mean, in March of last year when I decided to go all in, so like a year and a couple months ago, like it wasn't, looking back, it was not my decision to go all in. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to gain 35 pounds. I didn't want to do any of that. I didn't want to quit the gym. Like, and looking back, I'm like, where did that even come from? Like, oh, it was the Holy Spirit. It was me falling at my knees in front of him, like that I could no longer live this way. And I think that was him, you know, like that was him.
1,000%.
Right. We're doing this. Like, we're doing this right now. Like, you're going to address this right now. And that was not my choice. And then I think like as it progressed, it was like, hey, you're going to partner with me now. You're going to see how good I am, how faithful I am, and you're going to listen to me, and we're going to get through this.
I'm going to teach you to listen to me, right? Like, I'm going to teach you that I'm a good father, that the directions that I'm taking you in are good, right?
Yeah. And it was like, Lord, teach me how to surrender. And he's teaching me how to surrender, like just all these little things.
Oh, it's so good. I mean, I could talk on that for a bazillion years. Really, that's so good. So then now you switched to night shift, right? Which kind of gave, and that was like kind of right after your first ovulation, right? So, you know, like your body was still a little tender. Your like HPO axis was still a little like, and so the cycle after you didn't ovulate. And now we are looking to try to get back on ovulation this cycle with adjusting. So to eating more, you know, you've taken back out exercise, and now it's kind of just like the night shift, just kind of waiting until your body is like, I can do this on the night shift too, right? So not only do I have this cool new trick again, but now I'm doing it on a night shift.
And I mean, like, also what a blessing it is that now I know, okay, like night shift is a stressor on my body, so I need to do these things to tweak it. Like before, it would have been like, all right, well, I'm on night shift and I'm still going to exercise when I get off in the morning, and I'm still going to eat as little as possible. And, you know, like what
could you imagine the impact like that would have been? Like that would have been like climbing out of a massive hole.
Yeah, shutdown mode. Like, and now, like, I know I'm just like, okay, well, I obviously my body doesn't like what's going on right now, so I can do these things to, there's one big stress pot, and what can we take out that will eliminate stress on our bodies? And it's just, I mean, it is like, I'm just realizing this right now, like how powerful it is that I'm like, oh, like I know what to do now. Like I know what my body wants. I can listen to my body.
Yeah, okay, there we go. It's so cool because I was just talking about like this whole point, like once you get on the other side and like you miss ovulation, it's like, oh, hold up, I know what tools to use, and I know, and like it's not going to take me a million years to drag myself to do the thing that I need to do. I actually know exactly what I need to do. And is that not empowering, right? So rather than looking for a label like orthorexia, anorexia, health fitness, diet fitness, you know what I mean, to tell you what to do, it's like, wait, hold on, I actually know what to do.
Yep.
So powerful. Okay. So that's where she's at now. And we are pumped to get 2 more cycles of ovulating, just kind of see, just to really get this going. But I love that you are sharing this in like the midst of it, because I think a lot of people can be like, well, then it didn't work. No, it did work, and it is working. But sometimes we have to, like, we can't ignore the factors of our environment.
Yeah.
Right. And to where you're taking a lot of precaution to reduce all the additional stress, to make sure that the night shift stress isn't like stealing everything, you know?
Right. Stealing the show.
Stealing the show.
Yeah. And it's definitely one of those things too. And I think anyone who's gone through this would say, like, it sucks. It's absolutely terrible, but I would never want to go through this again. And so I'll never go back to the place where I was. And even if it does suck like now, or it did a couple months ago, like I'm just taking the season as it is, and kind of like, what can I do with this season? And also just using my testimony is an amazing spot to be in.
Oh yeah. Okay. So we're going to dive into just kind of like the end of the interview questions, which I love so much. Just because I feel like people connect with this so much. What was the hardest part of your HA recovery, whether it was mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally? Like, what was the hardest part?
I think the weight gain, definitely. I think it always came down to trying to control what my body was going to look like, and kind of like letting go, like I said, of that identity that I was white knuckling, of like being a skinny, fit gym girl. Yeah, I think weight gain was just always kind of what it trickled down to, was like, I don't want to do this, whether it was 2 more pounds, whether it was 20 more pounds. Like I just never wanted to. I mean, I drug my feet the whole way.
Right. And so I think 100%, no doubt. No doubt. What areas do you think that you've grown spiritually?
I talked about this a little bit, but I think learning how to surrender, and how to just kind of let things go, and letting the Lord teach me how to surrender, because there were so many times where I'm like, I hear him telling me to surrender. I hear it, but how do I even begin? Like, and it's just praying about it and asking. I mean, even for me, it was like little things, just like when I was making a meal, like, Lord, how can I surrender with this meal? Like, how can I just let go of my control with this? Or like I'm hungry at 11, but it isn't my lunchtime. And it's like, okay, the Lord's telling me to eat right now. Like I don't have to wait until lunchtime.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things about surrender is that we're like, okay, I let go of it. And for some reason, we immediately are like, well, what are you going to replace it with? Right. And so it's like this scary thing of surrendering and it not being replaced immediately that makes us squirm.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? To where the Lord's like, I just need you to be still so that when and like learn to listen to me and lean on me so that when I give you what I want to replace it with, you know what I mean? It takes root, it fills you, type of thing. I think that's the thing is like, we're like, I'm not surrendering unless I know exactly what you're filling it with.
Yeah.
And for us, it's like, I need to know more that you're just a good God. I need to know more that you're just faithful. You know what I mean? Like, like I say all these things, right? Because it's like, for us, we're like, well, what does that look like? Because I know what it looks like that I'm giving up. I'm giving up this thin control, like body type. And I need to know what body type you're going to replace this with to whether I'm okay with it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think it's literally just slowing down and listening for him, because like I can say even in the first like few months of doing recovery, like it was my way or the highway. Like I'm going to recover how I want and that's how it's going to be. And like now, like the things that I do, I'm like, I'm going to listen for the Lord in this. Like, what is he telling me that I should do? And how can I literally like rewire my brain, like do the opposite of what I would do before. And now like I do slow down and I do listen for him, where before it was just like that was all just such a blur in my head. It was like there was no hearing him. It was just, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do.
Totally. Oh my gosh, that's so good. Yeah. What is one of the hardest things to let go of during the recovery process?
Probably my identity. My identity. I keep circling back to this, but it's so true, because I mean that's literally who I thought I was. Like, and like I said before, you just get so many compliments and you get people asking you like, oh, like, can you help me with workouts, or like, can you help me lose weight, or you look so good and you look so skinny. And
you like the compliments from strangers too, right? I think you and I talked about this, but like, okay, my fiance loves me, my family loves me, my, like all these people love me, my friends love me. So who am I killing myself from? Like, like what are the compliments I'm really missing from? And it's kind of strange when we're like, oh, it's just the random compliments from people all the time. It's strangers. It's like, that's what I'm holding on to, is the offshoot of these compliments from people that I don't know or that I may not see again, or maybe it's a friend of a friend.
yeah, and it's like, who cares really? Like literally, who cares?
Yeah, it's like,
I mean, it is like still, I think it'll always be kind of like one of those tender things where I'm like, I definitely won't ever go work out at the gyms that I worked out at before, because it's, those memories are linked there and like all the people and stuff. But it's also one of those things of like, I'm surrounded by the people that love me. Like the Lord healed me, and that's what matters the most.
oh yeah, totally. It's like, I'm probably, and like, that's the same for like, I'm probably not going to return back to the place that was so slippery. Not saying that you won't return back to the gym, but like, what does it look like to be like, maybe I just need a different type of movement or a different gym or a different wherever, where I can lead with a healing and my identity through God, and not through the identity that I tried to create and be fulfilled and satisfied by.
Yeah, 100%.
That's so good. Okay, last question, because I know that we're kind of like coming down to it. What is the one area that the Lord addressed during your HA recovery that you're like, right now, like you really want to talk about? Like, I'm already in enough emotional pain. Like I'm like, you're like, Lord, I'm going through that. Do you really, like, why are we talking about this?
Yeah. I think the timeline, the timeline was a big thing. And which was hard. It was like, really, Lord, like I'm already going through all this turmoil. Like I'm like, do you not see how painful this is for me to gain? Like I am coming from this very vulnerable spot, and you want to tell me that it's not my time yet to get my period, or that it's not my time yet to ovulate. Like you're really going to tell me that? Like,
That is not my time for healing. Like, I'm like, is that a thing?
I'm like, I'm doing the work. Like, why aren't you giving me what I want? And it was like that. It was like, Lord, I'm praying so hard. Why aren't you giving me what I want? And like I said earlier, like he did hear my prayers, and it was his timeline and not mine. Like, obviously, if it were up to me, I would have got my period back in a month and I would be healed within a month. Like, and it didn't go that way. It was a very, very slow process for me. And looking back, I mean, it was meant to be that way. It was very drug out, but so much healing happened in that time. And I think there were so many deep roots to be pulled that it's like, this couldn't have happened overnight.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So good. All right. Well, we're definitely going to have you back on once you get this ovulation and give it some time. We're going to just kind of like recap afterwards. But I have a love that you got a chance to share this with everybody, because it's kind of one of those things where it's like, man, I just can't keep this to myself. Like, even like the small things where like your mom's friend was like, I don't know about Halle. She's been on my heart. I don't know. Does something like blood returning to her body mean anything? I mean, just the wild things, or just the sweet moments that you've had with the Lord where he has like spoken to you and you're like, I am shaking because I know I heard him. Right. Like, I mean, I just feel like those are the things that it's like, wow, actually, yes, it's cool that I got my period back, but what about those moments? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like in the end, it's like, it is cool that I got my period back, but look at all the healing that he's done elsewhere in my life.
So much healing on so many different areas and so many different levels, like way deeper than like, I'm sure you expected going into this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ashley.